They become blind to the miracles that he's done. I mean, it'd be one thing to say, okay, he talks a great talk, but he heals the blind and the sick, the lame. But they refuse to see it because of the past, because of what they remember him to be. And so instead, in that refusal, then they refuse to step out in faith and accept what Jesus says. So they become offended, is what it says to them. Their offense is that, they're saying, like, this. Their offense is in this person, normal like us, can talk with such authority that they become offended by the messenger as opposed to the actual message that's being said. They kind of go back to their old way of thinking about the Messiah and all the traditions and say, there's no way he can be the person that we've been told through all these years it's going to be. There's just no way Jesus can be this person. Their prejudice of this situation of the past refuses them to give up this control of what they know and accept this new way of teaching that Jesus has. And so as a result, what the passage here says then is they miss out on the miracles. But they hear all these stories, but we don't see it. I hear about this power that this Messiah, this Jesus has, but hey, I haven't seen it around here. And so they don't see any of it for themselves. So what does this story then say to us about being too familiar? And I think for me personally, and honestly, this speaks probably to me maybe more than you guys. Because I think sometimes when we become too familiar, we end up defining God in our faith by our own expectations. We hear what the Bible says about God and about Jesus. We see what is being told and going on, but we kind of create boundaries of what's comfortable to us or what is within my control and my area of safety. And we kind of accept things within there, but if it pushes me outside of my comfort zone, then I'm going to reject it. It doesn't. I'm not going to buy into it. That can translate in worship style, where our expectations are. I grew up in a church that was traditional in its expectations, and so when contemporary music first came, I can remember people saying, there is no way that can be worship. There's no way. Because the songs of the 50s, those were worship. And I'm thinking, God, what did Jesus do in the day when they didn't have the songs of the 50s, 1950s? But we set expectations and defined that this is because it made me feel worshipful. And so therefore it's got to be worship, even though someone else might think differently or experience something differently. People leave churches because they'll say things like, I wasn't fed. Well, what does that mean? God didn't feed you? Because I don't feed you. But we come into a church with expectations of what we think church should be and people in church should be, and when they don't meet those expectations, then we say, well, then it frees me to be able to move on because therefore it's not fitting in with parameters of what I think church should be. Relationships. We'll leave each other and break away from people for relationships because you've offended me. And in my definition of relationships is, hurt me once, shame on you, hurt me twice, shame on me, that I am not going to work in this relationship because why? Why would I put myself through you causing offense to me? So we take the gospel message and the Bible and we kind of create this definition of what we think it means to be a Christian in my terms. And so when we talk about the church, about things like serving, we'll define what would be service and what wouldn't be service. When we talk about things like coming together and worship, what's okay to worship? How often do I come? Do I get in a small group? I don't need small groups because I'm busy. And we begin to see this is the way I define my relationship with God based on my life and my schedule. And I think God's okay with that. We pick and choose. And so we walk in like an experience here today, and we begin to say, can I even worship in a room that's cockeyed, pointing to the corner, and when I need to go look at here to, I didn't even put you through PowerPoint because I thought, boy, you guys will freak out if you got it. What's the next point? I'm not going to put you through it. Instead of asking ourselves, how can I worship God in this environment? I might have shared this before, so forgive me, but it was a huge lesson for me. When Scott came on board, and before Scott, we were having several people worshiping or leading worship. And trust me, as a pastor each week trying to be able to get some continuity is crazy. Because each one's different, and they do different things. And so they come, and then they have something, I'm thinking, oh no, people are going to freak out, I'm going to freak out. Can I, And there was somewhere along the way I realized, wait a minute. What if I came into this Sunday with the idea that I want to discover and experience God? Forget the order, the direction. Forget the way we start, the beginning and the end. Forget the songs that they do. It doesn't matter. Because can I rise to a level of worship no matter what's going on around me? And if you can't do that in a church, you certainly couldn't do that out in the street. In doing that, then, we kind of break away from these expectations and we kind of come in and allowing God to kind of set the boundaries instead of ourselves. So you have the expectation issue that we fight with, which is kind of what was going on here. But then you also have this refusal to step out in faith. That after these expectations, even though he's speaking the truth, even though there's miracles, the bottom line is says, I'm just not buying into it. Because I know who he is, I remember who he was, and I just have a problem following my neighbor's kid. So we justify our rejection of the gospel or what God would say for us to do by rationalizing our behavior. We kind of say, well, I'm a really busy person, and I got to do this and I got to do that, and therefore, yeah, maybe it's good for some people, but I'm rationalizing and I can't do it. Or my personality doesn't justify. I can't step out of my comfort zone and meet with other people and talk about my struggles and my problems because, first of all, I don't know if you're going to accept it or reject it, and secondly, it's my business, and I don't like sharing my business. And so we define God and what he's asking of us based on what we are comfortable with and not what God would want. Truth kind of becomes relative because it fits, as long as it fits within my control, then it's good truth. If it goes out of my control and it requires me to change, then I really question whether that's the truth. We become like the Pharisees sometimes, who had said to Jesus in another part of the Gospels, show us a miracle and then we'll believe. We want God to show me first before I'm willing to step out. But that's not faith, is it? In every situation of faith, if you look, there's stories where they moved and then God performed. You talk about when they walked over the Jordan to the Promised Land, they were halfway into the river, almost sinking before God finally parted the water. I can imagine the first guy thinking, anytime now, God, anytime now, it's getting deeper, anytime. Same thing with Moses. It was God, he went out there and then he said, start going, and then it'll start separating. It wasn't like, okay, you guys sit here. I'm going to move everything out of the way and separate the water. I'll dry the ground. I'll lay out a nice little buffet table in the middle. Go. That's not the way God works. We want him to do that, though. Set up a buffet table for me, God. Let me go. And then be really cozy, and then I'll go. But that's not the way God works. And as a result, we tend to refuse because we think of God in the way of maybe our past or whatever, and so we refuse to step out in faith and be obedient because it's not comfortable. The consequence then is we live a powerless life. People, I gotta be honest with you. I think the church, and I don't mean Heartland in general, I mean the church, it in many ways exemplifies a powerless life.